Well, hello, DCO Nation. Welcome to Deadcom Outdoors Radio. This is the show where the tide set the tone and the bite tells the story. We're diving into everything saltwater inshore kayak fishing, from lures and locations to weather, water, and winning tactics. If it helps you hook up on more fish, we're talking about it right here. So grab your paddle, check your drag, and here we go. Well, hello, DCO Nation, and welcome to Deadcom Outdoors right here on the Outdoor Radio Network. My name is Chris, and I'd like to invite you to follow me on all my social medias on Instagram and Facebook, YouTube, Spotify. Just search Deadcom Outdoors, and we can get connected. So if you guys are into the long form videos, you know, I post a lot of my fishing trips on there, and you can catch those. And one thing that I don't really promote a whole lot is on Thursdays at 8 p.m., that's Eastern Standard Time, I have a what I call my DCO Live, where I go live on YouTube and on Facebook, and you can jump into the comments and ask me questions. It's a great little community that we're doing there every Thursday night. So I invite you guys to jump on there and check it out. So, guys, again, I really appreciate you guys stopping by. This is the first half of the Kayak Power Hour. I do all of the saltwater inshore kayak stuff, and then following me at 10:30 is Adam Milstead, who does straight yak, and he is all of the freshwater kayak stuff. So Adam is awesome. He is full of knowledge. He is just absolutely fantastic. So stick around and get your fill of kayak fishing for this hour. So, guys, really what I want to jump into is, you know, the weather is finally starting to break down here in South Carolina. This weekend, or I should say this past weekend, the weather was really nice. I got out on Saturday. It was a little bit windy because a front kind of pushed through. On Friday, we had rain, and it rained all day long. And when I mean it rained all day long, I mean from sun up to sundown, it rained. Now, it was warm. It was in the 60s, but it rained all day. So I decided to go ahead and get out on Saturday. The rain had pushed out. And so I just want to kind of talk about what I was seeing out on the water and just kind of take you guys along on my day trip. So I took off at about let me see, what time was it? Oh man, it was only a couple days ago, and I'm already starting to forget. That's awful. But it was about 10 o'clock. I got to the landing, started to unload some stuff, and met a couple of guys there that actually followed the channel, and talked to them for a few minutes. And they said that it's been about 4 or 5 weeks since they've been out on the water. So the weather and the conditions just really haven't been great, especially here in South Carolina. So, you know, we chatted it up for a little while, and I got all loaded up. I got my pedal drive in, I got my rods, I got my black pack loaded in, and I shoved off. And at this point, the water was already starting to go out. Low tide was at about 12:30. So I had about 2 hours before low tide. As I was pushing off, I noticed that the I was going to be about halfway into the first major feeding time. So I didn't catch the major started at about 9:15. I got there at 10, got out on the water maybe about 10:15, 10:20, something like that. So I was already in about halfway into the first major feeding. I kept it fairly close to the landing because the wind was whipping around pretty good. It was pushing anywhere between 12, 15 miles an hour, something along those lines. So, you know, I really wanted to find some protected areas to fish. So I was in Merle's Inlet, and if you guys know Merle's Inlet, I actually, when I left the landing, I went south towards the state park. I haven't fished that area in a while, and there were some areas that I wanted to hit that I was already thinking in the back of my mind that one, they were going to be wind protected, and two, there were going to be some deeper holes next to some shallow creeks. I knew that the water temperature was still going to be fairly cold, and I was thinking that these fish were going to be dropping off into some deeper holes. When I pushed out, I looked at my Garmin Striker 4, and the water temperature was right at 50 degrees. So that 50 degrees, again, I know I've said it before, it's kind of right at the start of when the fish really start to kind of come alive, especially in Merle's Inlet. Anything under 50 degrees in Merle's Inlet, the fishing can get pretty tough unless you start going to the jetties and maybe near shore and the ocean. Inshore fishing in Merle's can get pretty tough. So, with the front and the rain just pushing out, I knew a high pressure was moving in. The winds were out of the north, whipping up, that 15 miles an hour. And I think I was already setting myself up for having a bad day. I was thinking, you know what? The high pressure, the north winds, it's probably not going to be the best day, but I still wanted to get out and see what was going on. So I pushed south and I pulled a small little slim swim to start throwing around first thing. So it was a pearl white 3-inch slim swim on a 1/6 ounce finesse eye. So I wanted to keep it weedless because this time of the year in Merle's Inlet, we get an algae that hugs the bottom of the creeks, and we call it snot grass, but it's just a slick, nasty algae that hangs onto the bottom. And so I wanted to at least try not to scoop up a lot of this stuff as I was fishing during the day. But you guys who fish Merle's Inlet or South Carolina this time of the year, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So, that was my thought process. So, the snot grass was out. It's just one of those things that you have to deal with the, late winter, the beginning of early spring. So I'm pushing south and I come up to a small little creek mouth. Now, with the water dropping out, I thought, you know what? This would be a really good spot to maybe target some trout. There were oyster beds on each side of the creek mouth, kind of on the perimeter. So I'm thinking, okay, so if there's any type of bait around those oysters with some current coming out, maybe there's going to be some trout. So, I started pitching around there, didn't get anything, kept moving down. I knew of a deeper hole. So I started to fish this deep hole. It's a pretty popular area, and there was nothing there. So I kept that 1/6 ounce on to get down into that deeper hole. And I went over from the slim swim to a TRD tickler to really slow down, almost dead stick, maybe give things, a couple of little hops, thinking that maybe these slow lethargic fish really don't want anything moving too quickly. So again, my thought process was deeper holes. The water temperature was about 50 degrees, lethargic fish, keep it low and slow, and see if we can't find some things. Well, that deeper hole didn't produce. And that was right at about low tide. So I was about 2 hours in, haven't caught anything, but I'm seeing signs of life. I'm seeing pelicans dive down into the water to scoop up bait fish, which usually I steer clear of pelicans, but at least that was telling me that there were bait fish in the area that they were feeding on. So that's good. So I kept pushing up the creek. I went way back. Another hour went by. I'm throwing everything in the kitchen sink all the way up to a 3-inch minnows in Houdini color from Z-Man. And I went to an eighth of an ounce, a sixth of an ounce, a tenth of an ounce. I went really light with just a TRD, again, dragging on some mud bottoms that I was looking at. And, the bottom of the tide, the tide started to turn back around. I'm thinking, okay, incoming tide, maybe they didn't like the outgoing. And again, looking for signs of life, fishing around oyster bars. I was seeing the signs of life, but man, I was not catching anything. As I was heading back in towards the end of the day, I was watching some seagulls and some pelicans dive down into the water. Now, I was probably a couple hundred yards away from them. I was watching the activity, but I just couldn't get up to them. I'm almost positive they were probably on a school of fish, maybe a school of trout, but they were definitely feeding on some kind of bait fish or something that was swimming around there, because birds don't dive down just to dive down. They're feeding on something. By the time I got up to them, there was nothing there. They probably dispersed, dove down, but just didn't get anything that day. So, you know what? Again, I saw signs of life. I didn't get any hits. I didn't catch any fish. I think my plan was good with the lower water temperatures, going for the deeper holes. I also did check really skinny later in the day, about 3 o'clock, thinking maybe that, the fish may have crawled up on some mud, because it was starting to warm up a little bit, but didn't see anything up there either. So, you know what? That's fine. I got to get out there. We got to check things out. I got to see how the marshes are starting to come alive. So it was still a good day. I actually learned a lot. There were some areas I went to that I don't usually fish, and to see them at low tide, I was keeping some really good mental notes. So, guys, that was a very quick first segment. Stick around, because in the second segment, I'm going to be talking some tournament prep for a tournament that I'm going to be in this upcoming weekend. So, guys, stick around. You're listening to Dead Calm Outdoors right here on the Outdoor Radio Network. Well, welcome back, DCO Nation. We have been talking basically my recap of the day of fishing on Saturday, which was February 28th. And, again, I didn't catch any fish. That was fine. Water temperatures, I think, they're not quite there yet. I really like to see those water temperatures mid upper 50s and into the 60s before things really start to kick off. I know down in Charleston and the southern part of South Carolina, I know the fishing has been a lot better. They're usually warmer down there, obviously, because they're a little further south. But day in and day out, Charleston from Myrtle Beach is usually about 7 to 10 degrees warmer on average. So the water temperatures are probably more mid to upper 50s right now, where we're at, that 49, 48, 49, 50 degree water temperature. So we're still, a little bit on the cooler side. But guys, in this second half, I want to kind of talk about a tournament that I am going to be fishing this coming weekend. So on Saturday, March 7th, so depending on when you guys are listening to the episode, I am going to be fishing the Saltwater Kayak Series tournament, and it is going to be a slam tournament. So you need to catch a redfish, a trout, and a flounder. And with it being a kayak tournament, it is a catch photo release, a CPR event. So it's going to be held through Fishing Chaos. You guys who are do these kayak fishing tournaments. You guys know about catch, photo, release, and and so that's what the tournament is going to be. So the tournament boundaries is basically the South Carolina, North Carolina line, and then the South Carolina, Georgia line. So the whole entire state's coastline is open to fish, which is a huge boundary. Now, there is a boundary, a westward boundary, which is, I think it's Bushy State Park. And it's probably, it's right outside of Charleston. And then you can't do any beach fishing. You got to stay inside the barrier islands. But you can fish the entire coastline of South Carolina. Lines are in at 6 a.m. and then lines are out at 3 o'clock. So basically what I'm doing right now is I have been tracking the weather for about the last 3 or 4 days. So that would put me about 10 days out from the tournament. And right now the weather is looking really, really good. We are on a warming trend right now. Pretty much the rest of the week, I am recording this actually Monday, March 2nd. I've got about another, 5 days until the tournament, and the highs are going to be in the 60s and the 70s, and the lows is going to be like 60. So the water temperatures are really going to start coming up. I'll probably see water temperatures down in Charleston, probably in the 60s, which the fish should be firing off. The trout, redfish, flounder may be fairly tough to get. We usually don't get flounder coming back in from the offshore spawn until really the back end of March and beginning of April, when those water temperatures start hit, the upper 60s and 70 degrees. That's really when those flounders start moving back in. But I think we should be able to catch some smaller males. And as long as they are bigger than 16 inches for flounder for the tournament, they will count. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for redfish, trout, and flounder for the tournament. The weather's looking good. The winds are going to be down. I am seeing winds on Friday and Saturday being 5 to 10 miles an hour. So winds are not going to be a problem. I'm not going to have to look for any type of protected areas. So pretty much wherever I go is going to be prime fishing. Okay. I don't have to look for tree line, tucked away, wind protected areas, which is going to really open up everywhere that I want to fish. The tides are lining up to be, high tide is probably going to be around, I'm going to say 10 or 11 o'clock. So with it being, that 10, 11 o'clock, lines are in at 6. So, again, as I'm kind of talking with you guys, I'm thinking through kind of my tournament prep and how I want to fish the area I'm going to fish. Now, I'm not going to tell you where I'm going to be fishing. It is going to be in the Charleston area. As the tide is coming in, there is an area that has some docks that I am going to target first. So I'm thinking that as the water starts to flood in around these docks, I think there's probably going to be some reds and some trout around these docks. Okay. So again, that's kind of my thinking. The front half of the day, the first probably 4 hours out of the day, I think I'm going to work these dock areas, try to go ahead and pick up, a red and a trout, work some smaller baits around these docks, the little slim swims, the TRDs. I'm probably going to have to stay a little bit on the heavier side for a weight, because the area that I am going to be fishing, usually the current, the incoming tide current is pretty swift. So I think I'm going to have to stay on that 3/16 to a 1/4 ounce to make sure that I'm on the bottom for the redfish. Okay. Trout, I'm going to stay, I probably use like a 3/16. And with the current, it shouldn't drop to the bottom too quickly. It should be able to sweep by some docks, sweep by some pilings, and work that middle of the water column to pick up some trout. Okay. So again, my dock fishing, I think my plan, I think it's going to work. At least I'm hope it's going to work. And then I'm going to, at the top of the tide, at slack tide, when usually the fishing kind of drops off. Fish usually don't in saltwater feed during slack tide. Now, you can catch flounder during slack tide. They're that aggressive, but I think I'm going to take that, 30 to 40 minutes of slack tide and move to another area. And the other area that I'm thinking about moving is to a flat. There are some creeks that open up to this big flat area. It's probably going to take me all of about 40 to 45 minutes to get there. And then I can use the next 3.5 hours of fishing to fish the outgoing tide as the water is dumping off of that flat. So I think those creeks will, again, produce some reds and some trouts, but the flounder is going to be the wild card. It is going to be the one that I'm really going to have to work for. My goal is to get a red and a flounder, a decent one, get me on the board quickly, and then start to hunt for that flounder. If for some reason I pick up a flounder really early, man, that is going to be icing on the cake. But again, that is going to be the one that I am going to have to work for because, like I was saying earlier, the flounder usually don't move in until those water temperatures start to hit about 70 degrees. Now, maybe down in Charleston in this area, maybe some of the flounder are starting to move in. So again, that's what I'm hoping for. So let's kind of talk about the baits I'm going to be using. Z-Man Slim Swims, probably in some pearls, some chartreuses, and some natural colors. I'm going to be using the TRDs, the TRD ticklers. Again, I like the deal color. I like the, again, the natural colors. There's there's a purple death up here that I'm looking at. There's a new money that I'm looking at, a Houdini that I'm going to be throwing in TRD. I'm going to be throwing the minnows, the Z-Man minnows, which is a 3-inch paddle tail. And I'm going to be throwing that in the Houdini color, the trout sickle, pearl, beer run, natural colors. I'm also going to be throwing some jerk shads, trying to get maybe a little bit bigger profile. I'm thinking about throwing the Z-Man thick tricks. So those are all kind of the baits that I am really going to be looking at. And again, the weights and the jig heads are really going to vary by the current and the speed of the current. So as I get closer to the top of the tide, when the current starts to slow down, I can lighten up on my weight a little bit. But as that current is ripping, especially around those docks, I'm going to have to go with some heavier weight, all the way up to that 1/4 ounce. Now, the areas that I am going to be fishing are going to be, probably no deeper than 8 to 10 feet. So that 1/4 ounce should be perfect. So guys, lines will be out at 3 o'clock. Hopefully I have a good day. I am going to go down and do some pre-fishing on Friday. Hit these areas, check out and see what I see as far as bait moving around. And guys, it's going to be great. I have been looking forward for this tournament for a while now, and it's finally here. I'm going to continue to do my prep, clean up my kayak, get it ready to go, get everything loaded in. I've got my hotel booked. I'm staying down there so I don't have to get up early and, travel 2 hours down to Charleston. But guys, that's it for this week. I appreciate you guys, sticking around. And, if you guys ever have any questions, you can hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, shoot me a message, and I'll be more than happy to chat with you guys. And, give me a follow on Spotify and on YouTube. And guys, remember, we're going to end it like we always do. Conservation starts with you. Release a fish for someone else to enjoy. Wish me luck this weekend. Hopefully, I'm going to recap this next week on next week's episode. So, guys, wish me luck. But, guys, you've been listening to Dead Calm Outdoors right here on the Outdoor Radio Network.